Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
You know, there's nothing wrong with giving history a little bit of an interesting spin, and if you're within the sound of my voice, that must mean you're in the seats with once more. As always, my name is Dave Voigt, and I'm the host of this podcast, where we sit down with a wide-ranging variety of industry professionals and pick their brain about current projects, state of the industry, how they got started, and so very much more in a light and conversational fashion. And if you like how we do things around here, I'm assuming you do, you're listening to us right now. You can subscribe to the podcast. You can find us at Apple, Spotify, Amazon, Google, basically wherever you find your podcasts. Plus, you'll find every single one of our episodes archived over at our YouTube channel. And if you wouldn't mind liking and subscribing over there too, we'd really appreciate it. Also, you can follow us on the social media, as the kids call it. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at either @InTheSeats or at It's Podcast One for all sorts of fun updates. And finally, and I do dare say most importantly, please pay us a visit over at InTheSeats.ca for all the latest and greatest from the world of film, television, video on demand, film festivals, the moving image in general, because that's what we love to write about and we love to talk about it, and we love it when you come read about it. So please come and pay us a visit. On this episode, we got a fun one. An unexpectedly fun one, let's just say that. We're talking to a couple of showrunners, Mr. Frank Spotnitz and Steve Thompson. Frank you may know from shows like The X-Files and things like that. And Steve has been involved in Sherlock and other hit British shows. And we're talking about the new series called Leonardo, which is available on Telus On Demand now, starring Aidan Turner in the title role, and it really sort of dives into the history of some of his art and sort of the stories behind some of his the art of Leonardo da Vinci, I should say. And it's a fun and fascinating kind of show because it really makes it sort of turns an art history lesson into like almost a procedural, really, because it's got layers. It's a really well done show, and we talked with both guys about just sort of the development of the series and how they got started, and a lot more. And it's again, it's if you have Telus, Telus Presents, as it were, you should check out Leonardo because it is a fun show, and well, it's not quite as fun as our talk with Frank and Steve, but it's close. But you'll enjoy them both. So we'll see you next time. All right. Well, first of all, guys, thank you so much for the time today. I really appreciate this.
Pleasure.
Now, walk me through, I guess, the origin of the show, because I mean, I kind of love just how it's centered around the artwork and just sort of telling stories along the way, but with the grander story of him being locked up. I mean, walk me through, I guess, sort of the inspiration or the sort of initial idea to tell his story, but this way.
Well, the initial idea came from the Italian production company because it's 500 years, as you know, since Leonardo died.
Yeah.
And they were very keen to celebrate that moment with a show, and they came to us. And we were both really excited about the idea of engaging with this character and started to wade through the material. And then the first thing you realize is just the quantity of it. There's not just one story you can tell here. There are many, there are dozens of stories because there were so many facets to his life. He wasn't just an artist, he was an inventor, he was so many things, he was a polymath. So the next stage in the process really for us was to wade through this great wealth of material and find where the anchor points were that we were actually going to choose to tell the story of his life. And I suppose there are two things. One, as you know, is that each individual episode centers around a particular piece of art. And we chose pieces of art where there was a really interesting story attached to its birth, a real struggle attached to the creation of the piece of art. So some of those episodes and some of those pieces are not necessarily the ones you might expect, but we've chosen ones where there's a very, very good story about its genesis.
For sure.
And that's one spine. And then the other spine is, of course, the emotional story of his close relationships with people.
Now, I mean, there was a line in episode 3, which I think really kind of sums up the show, just that love is the poisoner of reason. I mean, for me as a fan, that almost feels like sort of a really juicy intro to way to sort of start telling the story of a character. Like, can you guys talk about just sort of, I guess, getting into the meat of it all, just because, like you say, as much as it's about the art, it's about this guy and about his passions and about what he's done in his life. And there's really sort of so many more layers that I didn't expect in this one.
Well, that's sort of why we invented this fictitious frame of Leonardo being accused of murder and the Freddie Highmore character interrogating him, because we knew that if we simply told a story about Leonardo as an artist, that wouldn't be successful. You needed to also give the audience, something about him as a man, and understand what drove him, because he was so extraordinarily driven to create. He was really relentless and one of the most curious people who ever lived, curious about everything. And so through the Freddie Highmore character's interrogation of Leonardo, he's sort of like the surrogate audience, demanding answers of Leonardo, coming to understand Leonardo. And he starts out, somewhat hostile to Leonardo, and then can't help but kind of, be moved and fall in love with him as an artist over the course of the 8 episodes. And you come to see this person. You can never really explain genius, genius just is, but you kind of understand where it came from, which was this guy who was abandoned by his father, who had no family, who turned to his work, in lieu of life, in lieu of love. And then in our telling, finally does come to find a kind of life and a kind of family, unconventional family, only to have to sacrifice it. So that was the coherent narrative that we kind of built out of the pieces that we found of his life.
Now, I mean, I'm kind of curious, how would you guys sort of define the show? Because I mean, in watching it, it almost felt procedural, but at the same time, it wasn't. And like, it really does feel like this sort of interesting blend of drama, but there is still that element of suspense to it all.
Yes, you're right. There is a thriller at the heart of it. There is a mystery at the heart of it too. So it is a hybrid in that sense. I mean, for me, the mystery is tantalizing. Caterina da Cremona was a real person, but we have so few details about her life. We have one picture of her, one sketch of her, and one reference to her in Leonardo's work. We don't know who she was. We don't know much about her. We don't know why she disappeared. And also we don't know why the most famous painting of her, Leda and the Swan, was destroyed. So history has given us this great mystery, and Frank and I were scratching our heads, puzzling over it, trying to solve it and try to come out with our answers. So yes, I mean, you're right. There is a slight procedural element because there is a mystery at the heart of it.
Talk to me. I love Aiden in the role, and I mean, he really brings this sort of desperate gravitas to it all. And I'm kind of curious. Walk me through sort of the process of finding him, because I mean, the old joke is 90% of the job is in the casting process, right? So talk to me a little bit about sort of narrowing in on Aiden.
Well, I mean, he was our first choice. I mean, it sounds a bit slick, but talk about that conversation where somebody says to you, okay, here we are at the beginning of the process. What's your dream casting? And Frank and I both went Aidan Turner almost simultaneously. And then a year later, we were scratching our heads going, oh, he did it. It was amazing. We actually got the guy. We got the guy. I mean, Aidan is perfect, as you said, because he has that extraordinary gravitas that he brings to it, but also this incredible range of emotional color, which he brings. He's very, very charismatic, and very charismatic performer, and really works beautifully with other actors. He's very giving on set, and you can watch him and the other actors kind of create it between them. Frank and I had to fly up to Malta to meet him and to sort of shake hands on the deal, and that was really incredibly exciting. He was filming out there, and we just went out and had lunch, and sort of shook hands over the deal, and he signed on, which was wonderful.
It is quite a trick, though, to portray a genius, to be credible as somebody that brilliant.
Yeah.
And that was one of the qualities he had, was just this gravitas, and you believe it, that he has this incredible mind. And it's also true that Leonardo da Vinci was famously a very good-looking man. So Aidan had both of those things going for him, and he took it very seriously. He traveled to Paris before filming began, and sort of went on a private tour. They had a huge exhibition of Leonardo's work, and he was alone in the Louvre with a lot of Leonardo's paintings. And then, of course, he had to be left-handed, and he is an artist himself, which I think also helped.
But he's right-handed.
Yeah, right.
That's a tricky, yeah. Now, I mean, something I really love about the show is that it genuinely felt international. It wasn't necessarily sort of on a back lot somewhere, and it felt genuine, and it felt, I mean, in many ways it felt very Italian. And I'm kind of curious, how important was it for you guys, not just in telling the story, but to make it sort of feel as genuine as humanly possible, and not just, you know, say, quote unquote, a bunch of British actors on a back lot, you know, somewhere north of London kind of thing?
Oh, sure. It was incredibly important. And I think actually there I need to salute Dan Percival, the director, because his whole philosophy was bringing as much period detail, as much quality detail to the whole show and to the process of creating the art. And obviously we were incredibly lucky that we were filming in Italy on location, certainly for the first part of the shoot, and going to these wonderful locations, and working with these, you know, incredible local actors. So, you know, I think it does have a very genuine flavor, as you say.
And Dan did pay extremely close attention to all of the art in the show, which is an incredibly big challenge, you know, because we didn't just have to like show the reproductions of the famous work. We had to show it being created step by step. And we had to show art that he never finished or that doesn't exist anymore, and make you believe that that's real Leonardo art. And that is not easy to do. But also, you know, it is genuinely an Italian show. Like, you know, almost everybody behind the camera was Italian. We were shooting in the real locations. Our editorial support came from our Italian partners and Italian broadcaster. So there was a real authenticity to it that, you know, we needed that collaboration to guarantee.
Now, just to put a bow on this, because I'm curious from both your perspectives, you've both worked on a wide range of like different shows, you know, inside different genres. But I'm kind of curious for both of you, like when you're looking at a story and you're trying to develop something, what is sort of the ultimate, I guess, idea, or sort of real core of the idea that you want to sort of get across? Is it character? Is it sort of concept? Is it idea? Like when you're developing something, what is the most important thing for you guys?
For me, it's a really, really simple thing, and it sounds quite facile when I say it, actually, but it's not, which is, do I really want to hang out with this bloke for 8 hours? and you know, do I really want to be in his company? And what is it about him and the situation and the story that makes me want to hang out there? And you know, it sounds like a very simple thing, but it's incredibly important.
I agree with that. I'll give a slightly longer answer, though. I think, because it's such a good question you're asking, I think the perfect story, the character and plot, are so deeply interwoven that you couldn't pull them apart. Like, this story could only happen to this person.
Right.
And the stories that I am drawn to, and I have been fortunate enough to have a wide variety of genres and stories in my career, are ones that I'm emotionally engaged by. Like, I'm really entertained and moved and enjoying the story. But after it's over, there's something to think about. You know, after it's over, I may think about it days, weeks, you know, months, hopefully years later. There's something, I'm glad I watched that. And I find, you know, the best television is television that stays with you. And I'd like to think Leonardo, you know, is really about something, and gives you plenty of food for thought.
Well, I think it does, and then some. It's really a fantastic piece of work, and just congratulations to you both. And thanks for the time today, guys. This was fun.
Thank you so much.
And don't forget to visit our friends over at Bay Street Video for all your DVD, Blu-ray rental, or purchasing needs this summer, as they are still open for curbside and some mailing delivery as well. Over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, you can give them a call at 416-964-9088. That's 416-964-9088. Or send them an email at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for any of your DVD and Blu-ray needs.